y buenas tardes
Well,
para
good
algunos.
morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are, and welcome to this preparatory webinar for the 5th World Forum on Local Economic Development, which will be taking place in May in Cordoba, Argentina. First of all, I'm going to introduce myself because I think out of the 500 people who are listening, some of you know me and some of you don't.
En todo caso, soy Carles Llorens, secretario
My
general
name is Carles Llorens. I am the Secretary General of ORU FOGAR from the United Nations Organization, which covers 600 regions around the world. ORU FOGAR, together with the UCLG and the International Labour Organization and FAMSI in Andalusia in Spain, have been working together for the past 5 editions on this forum and also on the preparatory webinar. We organize this forum in order to discuss these policies, and I think that this time it's going to be more relevant than ever. We always work with local partners, and this time we'll be working with people from the region of Cordoba in Argentina, the municipality and province of Cordoba, as well as the local development agency. Today we're going to be talking about generating employment and job opportunities in the digital sphere. So I just wanted to set the topic within its framework. We from our side and from the International Labour Organization, who are helping to organize this forum and this event, we've just been informed that the pandemic had, up until August of last year, entailed the destruction of 495 million jobs. So that's an important issue and a very substantial figure. All experts say, and these experts include Jeremy Rifkin, they all say that there are two big spaces where jobs will be created in the short term. Jeremy Rifkin and other experts say that the energy transition is an opportunity to generate millions of jobs, which is very promising. And after all, climate change is pushing us forward to leave fossil fuels aside, and this can be a good opportunity for employment. And the other sphere is the digital field, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We will be talking about all of this at the forum itself in May. But in the meantime, we have with us a series of panelists, some of whom come from different continents. We have speakers from Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes in France. We have people from Argentina, from Catalonia, the Basque Country, from Rabat in Morocco. So our experts come from all over and they can share their best practices in the digital sphere and in job opportunity from different territorial areas. And first of all, I'd like to give the floor to Manuel Fernando Calvo, the Vice Governor of Cordoba in the province of Argentina. After all, although this is a virtual event, they are the hosts and the greatest collaborators in this forum. So I'd now like to give the floor to the Vice Governor to welcome us all to this event. Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure for me to take part in this second preparatory webinar of what will be the 5th World Forum on Local Economic Development. As you know, this was going to take place here in the province of Cordoba in Argentina, but due to this, as we would say, darn pandemic, the year has been very complicated and it's had to be online. But I'd like to thank you for inviting me to take part. I'd like to thank the organizers of the forum, the committee. I'd like to thank Carles Llorens as the Secretary General of the ORU FOGAD, and I'd also like to thank everyone, all of you who are going to be taking part in this webinar today. As Carles was just saying, this is a place for debate, a forum to talk about the digital revolution and its impact on employment. I think this is a very relevant topic in today's international global context, and it is crucial for citizens, companies, governments, and civil society organizations to jump on board as quickly as possible. We know that access to internet is now a human right in itself, and the digital world has to reach everyone. Especially, we know that it's important in the employment field. We know that some jobs will become obsolete, as Carlos was just saying. The International Labour Organization is taking part in this. And we know that there will also be new jobs created. We're aware that this can create some sense of uncertainty, of fear, because people are possibly thinking that they're going to be without jobs, that they're not going to be able to adapt to this digital world because the digital world is going to completely take over their jobs. But we're here to think about that today. We're here to think about how to include everyone in this new labor context. We're here to talk about what new jobs will be created, what opportunities will emerge in the creation of employment, which jobs are going to become the most important in the future, and how the governments at the different levels can help to drive this change and to foster the growth in employment. That's why I think we need to address 4 key points: an alliance between the private sector, the public sector, academia, and civil society organizations. That's the first point. I think we need to talk about democratizing technology, which essentially means narrowing the urban divide and not leaving anyone behind. We also need to think about qualifying people, about moving on from our somewhat obsolete educational systems. We have old-fashioned masterclasses. Let's turn this into an opportunity and make it more accessible to more people. We have them already today, but we're going to need these opportunities and these qualifications more and more tomorrow. We also need to look to people who are looking for jobs. We need to try and reach out to them and learn from their insight, help them to access technology and find new ways of seeking employment. And we also need to think a lot about supporting entrepreneurs. We also need to think about businesses and everyone, innovators who are looking to revolutionize our world. From here, from the government in Cordoba, we are striving to bring high-speed quality internet to everyone in the province. And the goal is for people not to have to move to large metropolis to get the conditions they need to provide the jobs. Here in Cordoba, we have 427 municipalities, a lot of people living in very small rural areas, and our demographics are very much spread across the territory. We have the tourism industry here, mechanics, the industry of know-how. We have this, fortunately, we have 13 universities. One of them is aged over 400 years old. But ultimately, all of our activities have something in common. They need to be part of the digital revolution. They need to have the tools that are going to allow them to be in that digital revolution. That's the challenge we're facing every day. That's the challenge we're addressing. And we're constantly working to make this a reality. And just to wrap up, I want to say how important it is to have these debates, these forums like this on local and regional development, especially on the economic side. Roles are being redefined, regional and local difficulties are being redefined, and they're becoming more and more common around the world, very much shared, and so are the solutions. In a space like this, local and regional governments are gaining importance, gaining significance as drivers of narrowing the digital divide. We know that it's important to have citizens on board to make them real stakeholders in this. That's why it's so important for us to take part in this great experience. From here, from Cordoba in Argentina, we want to carry on taking part in initiatives like this, and we want to share our insight and our expertise in order to help to drive new development models that will improve the quality of life of everyone. I want to thank Carles and all of the organizers for giving me the chance to take part in this webinar. I know it's a preparatory webinar for the upcoming forum, but I'd like to thank you for letting me be here and including the province of Cordoba, Argentina. Our Minister of Employment and Promotion, Laura Jure, is going to be with us throughout the whole event. She's going to be talking to us about a series of programs that have a lot to do with what I just said in my introduction. Thank you again to all of you, and I wish you all a wonderful day. Thank you, Mr. Vice Governor, for your words, for being here with us. We're going to move straight on to give the floor to Mr. Bruno Quick, who is the Technical Director of the Brazilian Service of Support to Micro and Small Enterprises. In this forum, the spotlight is on local and regional governments. But I have to say that this support service, the SEBRAE, organized the third forum on local economic development, and it did so in Brazil. So for us, they are a key partner, which is partly why we have invited their technical director to join us, because they have a lot to say in relation to job creation, especially in the digital revolution. So, Mr. Bruno Quick, the floor is yours. Good morning, Carles. Hello, everyone. I'm going to be speaking in English because the similarity between Spanish and Portuguese is too dangerous for me. My words could easily get mixed up because they're so similar, but they can have dangerously different meanings. So I don't want to risk speaking this mix of Spanish and Portuguese.
In your name, Mr. Carles, and our host, Mr. Manuel. So thank you very much. Congratulations for this wonderful and the opportunity that you're making this meeting. It's very important to talk about this now so we can make the right choices to really generate jobs, new jobs from the digital economy. Well, I'll talk a little about opportunities and challenges posed by the digital revolution in our contemporary world. Well, the digital economy has opened enormous possibilities for customers, companies, governments, and institutions in general. Knowledge is now available to everyone in the world through a digital device. And this aspect, it's even more important right now when we are going through this terrible pandemic. So, as the pandemic has shown, distance learning is not only a possibility. As an example, distance learning is not just a possibility, but in some cases, the only option, but overall, a great resource. So this digital way, it's now has changed the culture because of the pandemic. So it's gaining a lot of space in the economy, in the society, in the cultures. So we must really take pay attention on it and take the advantage of it. During the last years, the e-commerce has been essential to keep economy afloat and to reduce the exposure to COVID-19. In the same sense, we can connect the best consultants, for an example, and we have done it in Sebrae, all over the world to small business many miles away from them. So we could increase the access to knowledge and technology. Well, we can build powerful knowledge and innovation networks, and that's very important, and make a difference in the productivity of entrepreneurs and companies. And so we take advantage of this possibility. The gig economy, or the digital economy, has provided customers with better and faster goods and services, and small companies and micro entrepreneurs with occupation and income opportunities. In this open battleground, startups from all over the world can thrive in the global market and create numerous jobs. That's very good, mainly for the highly educated and young. We must pay attention on that. Moreover, the digital economy has helped to expand opportunities and create jobs in more traditional sectors. Another very specific and important matter in this discussion, to think about the traditional sectors, such as tourism and services in general. Today, as an example, a tourist from Asia or Europe can easily book a birdwatch tour with a local guide in Amazon, directly from their digital device or a phone. This is just a simple example of how, when integrated, I'd like to highlight this point. This is just an example. When integrated, the online world can positively impact the real economy. After all, the economy is not and should not be a zero-sum game. So we must take care of not creating jobs and killing jobs in other sectors, like the traditional sectors. However, if the digital revolution has opened many possibilities, the gains from it may not be so evenly distributed. As an example, who might have imagined 10 years ago that huge companies in California, for an example, would directly compete with taxi drivers in São Paulo or small hotels in Buenos Aires? If, on one hand, this new economy can increase the use of underutilized resources or opportunities of generating more income, it's clear that the bulk of the value generation on these platforms remains with the creators and investors, not with the people and companies that populate them. If we don't take this into consideration, we can increase the concentration of wealth. Even in the developed economies, this should be a concern. To give sense of how uneven the distribution of the digital economies is until now, in the US, the largest digital retailer alone is worth more than the other 9 US top retailers, combined, such as Walmart, Home Depot, Costco, Target, and many others. In the digital environment, small business access markets through these huge platforms, bringing more value value to it. However, their margins have become increasingly smaller, with some platforms charging as much as 30% of the seller's turnover. In summary, small business might have to choose between not join those marketplaces and risk not having enough customers, or being part of them and risking going out of business because of shrinking margins. Concluding, we would like to highlight 3 important areas of concern, like Mr. Manuel just did. Market and fair trade, 1 point, education and job qualification, 2nd point, and access to technology and connectivity, 3rd point. Going to the end, we must not forget that education for the job market is still a significant problem in the developing world, and many of our population aren't ready for the 20th century. How might we prepare them for the job market on the next century? That's the point. Additionally, connectivity is still a challenge in poor nations. As we have, like in Maranhão, one of our states, only 1/3 of the entrepreneurs have access to the digital economy. As we have seen with millions of students in Brazil who stayed months without classes during the pandemic because they didn't have computers, smartphones, or tablets available at home. It's a matter of availability of technology and the cost of using it. So the question becomes how we improve digital inclusion and literacy, how we empower small business in the platform world, how can we make sure they get a fair share on online markets, how can we use the online environment to expand. That's for me, it's the more important point. How, for us in Sebrae, how can we use the online environment to expand opportunities and productivity of the traditional economy? We should focus on finding ways to use in the digital strategies in order to add more value to the local economy and to small business. We hope to keep exchanging knowledge with all of you, the back presses, and Sebrae is very open and desires a lot of partnerships. So thank you very much and a good meeting for all.
Muchas gracias, señor Bruno Kitsch.
Thank you very much, Bruno Quick. We will now go on to introduce our panelists after the introduction given to us by the Vice Governor and the Director of Sebrae. We're going to launch a question to all of our speakers who come from very different countries and ask them to share with us an example of best practice in job creation within the digital revolution sphere. The first speaker will be Daniel Rodriguez from the Digital Cluster in the region of Auvergne-et-Rhône-Alpes. I presume he will be speaking French. We are delighted to have him here with us because Auvergne and Rhône-Alpes is a region that is really strongly wagering on the digital revolution. And perhaps in his example, he will talk to us about the creation of the digital campus, a digital university in itself, with the aim of turning the region and Lyon as its capital into the Silicon Valley of Europe. So the floor is yours, and I'd like to keep as short and sweet as you can.
Very much for having us here. It's impressive because there are a lot of different people with, well, highly skilled people. I am the director of organization without, well, an NGO, an association that works with members, companies that are members of this association. There are 500 digital companies and 500 schools and universities that are all in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. And these digital companies have had an important activity that has continued throughout the pandemic. It has also needs more support. Before I talk to you about the digital campus, our vision. So the digital companies contribute to actions that convert companies to digital. That can also help prepare companies future crisis. In France, we can see that many companies were not ready for the crisis and noticed their weak points, and this digital revolution could make them stronger and more resistant. In certain cases, we support and accompany companies transformation in their digital transformation. Well, the good way to accompany them is to listen to them and to work with them to find solutions rather than telling them what to do. Company does not necessarily know best what is right for them. So if an IT company shouldn't tell other companies, digital companies, what to do. We want to understand the points of friction, the problems for other companies, and from there, together, we want to create digital solutions that are adapted to each company. Like this one, like this forum, we are interested in collaborating with other sectors, other companies, to bring forward new solutions. We also want to learn from others, how others work, what are their solutions, and we really believe that there's a lot of innovation possible. Only technological innovation, but there's also a lot of usage innovation. We also want to encourage online working and training. These are competencies that are very important in this digital age, and that affects every sector and each job. People would like to keep their jobs. It's important that they have access to training to become more digital. And here in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region, the president of the region, our president, important to have a digital campus, so a place where industrial sectors, digital companies, and schools can meet and come together. Big objective, which means that this region is very motivated, it's very active with these kinds of problematics. So here we have gathered digital companies, so that have a vision for the 4.0 industry in the future. With companies, there's not necessarily teachers, there's coaches. Today, it's a project that was started 4 years ago, and that is now. Years ago, we didn't think there would be this pandemic and this big crisis. and and how much the digitalization would be necessary. Is encourage exchanges between the different sectors and bring forward new solutions for the future. I just want to add one little point. Digital companies are a little bit less traditional with agile. They co-create solutions. About France, obviously, I don't want to talk about other countries. There's a lot of sectors in society, in life, that would need these new ways of governing and managing that leave space for personal initiative. So to collaborate on projects where we can exchange and share the efficiency. Also a lot of ethical questions around the digital revolution. But I'll leave you with this. Why not create good
Donc aujourd'hui, ce projet de campus, il se lance. Il a envie de s'ouvrir aussi à des collaborations internationales.
Well on its way, and we are also looking for international collaborations. We regroup a lot of different skills, digital skills around this initiative. To be brief, and I was, so I'll stop there.
Thank you very much. Yes, it has been perfectly understandable. At least the interpreting I was listening to in Spanish was very well done. Thank you, Carle. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. This is a place for sharing best practices right at the moment, but later on, Monsieur Baudry, we will have the opportunity to talk about policies and bridging the digital divide in the social or territorial sphere. At the moment, we're going to focus on talking about best practices. And we're now going to move on to hear from Alejandra Torres, the Secretary of Planning, Modernization and International Relations in the municipality of Cordoba in Argentina. So before it was the province of Argentina, of Cordoba in Argentina, and now it's the municipality. So that we can hear from people from both levels, and they are our hosts in this event. So, Ms. Torres, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon. For those of you for whom it is a little bit later, as a sign of gratitude to everyone who organized this, I wanted to say thank you. And I wanted to highlight the title of this webinar. I think the importance of creating employment in a revolution, a digital revolution, is crucial. Because I'm very much aware of the time constraints, as Carles reminded us, I'm going to focus on a series of points. I think generally we tend to see technology as a form of destroying employment. And we tend to have the feeling that it is a threat for the older generations because it will destroy employment. But all of the digital revolutions we've had have in fact generated employment. And especially now in the pandemic context, where the digital transformation of entrepreneurs, society, and productive fabric is a need, as is the need to improve bureaucracy. This is an opportunity, and so I want to present a case from here in Cordoba, where we had to take over management of the city council in 2019. It's a city that was very far from seizing the opportunities of digital revolution, and it had a very difficult bureaucracy. So we had to very quickly and very dynamically embrace this digital revolution. And of course, due to the pandemic that then subsequently came, we needed to be able to give an efficient response for the residents of the city of Cordoba. So what we did was to start by removing the postal service wherever it was unnecessary. We wanted to start sending everything by digital means rather than using paper. That's something that we started implementing, the digital citizen platform, which we use to send notifications to all of our citizens. Here, I'd like to add something very important. One of the most successful topics that we've seen in this digital transformation is not only promoting the generation of employment from the private sector and by supporting entrepreneurs, which we are of course doing here in the city of Cordoba with the development of GovTech, which is a private initiative. The city of Cordoba is a place where the digital ecosystem is now very well developed. They have not only national but also international prestige. There have been more successful projects here than there have anywhere else, more so-called unicorns. And that's an opportunity we really need to leverage. But we, of course, need to also drive the public sector. There are players in the public sector who have the ability to be disruptive, to be dynamic, innovative, who are not afraid to make mistakes and to learn. That's often the case in the private sector, but not so much in the public sector. The public sector is not often able to respond so quickly to the digital transformation that citizens need. So in this new arrangement, we are trying to develop the digital ecosystem and also address the bureaucratic needs. And our aim is to encourage digital entrepreneurship and to ensure that the state is not an obstacle in the generation of employment in this process. So another just brief comment that I want to make is that there are things that we don't give the importance that they deserve. And one of them is that the state often falls behind in the digital processes because it's slow, it has very slow habits and adaptability. And often what that entails is rigidities and lack of flexibility. I'll give you an example. In the city of Cordoba, we have a process of change which is fostering private works. So when an entrepreneur wants to undertake private works and engage in generating new industrial projects, and they have to, let's say, demolish a building, it will usually take them about 2 years to get the license they need. 2 years in an economy like Argentina or any other economy is a very long time in such a rapidly changing world. It can mean that a business will fail, and it can mean that the employment that they were going to generate will not be created. So we need to look at all of the administrative processes that we have in place, all of the formalities that we require, and that's what we've been successfully doing in spite of the pandemic. We have managed to shorten these horrifically long bureaucratic processes and change them from a 2-year average to under 2 months. And we've done that with so many other processes as well. And in practice, that means that we're no longer obstructing private initiatives. And in our idea of re-engineering the whole of the City Council, another thing we've done is, after adapting our framework, we have tried to find the most appropriate technology to ensure that the processes that they're undertaking, that we're undertaking, are as transparent and as efficient as possible. And I don't want to go on much longer, but I'd like to say that now, with the simplification and modernization of the province of Córdoba through a local ordinance, we have paved the way to become a digital city, to become a city where the state helps its citizens and doesn't have processes that hamper their processes. Our idea is to foster these ecosystems because these are allies for the public administration. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. One of the speakers was saying this earlier. We should be co-creators in more agile processes to foster employment. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Torres. We will now move on to hear about the best practice of David Ferrer, the Secretary General of Digital Policies of the Government of Catalonia. Mr. Ferrer, the floor is yours. I'm afraid we can't hear you. You'd need to switch your microphone on.
Disculpad, decía buenas tardes.
Forgive me, I was just saying hello to everyone. I want to just quickly share a presentation with you. I'm not sure if you can see it. Can you?
Sí, perfecto. Muy bien.
Yes, perfect. Good. In that case, I will start with my presentation. I'm going to very briefly outline the policies that we are driving here in Catalonia. And the Catalonian government is trying to foster employment in the digital sector. Our approach towards this, as the Secretary General was saying earlier, is as follows. The World Economic Forum presented a document a few months ago outlining the challenges that humanity is facing at the moment. And Carles was mentioning two of these challenges. Humanity has migratory challenges, climate-related challenges to do with the green transition towards the green economy, and also a challenge in the digital revolution and the way digital technology affects us. Our first speaker already mentioned this as well. They were talking about the impact on employment of digitalization. That's why the government of Catalonia, when it was formed 3 years ago, made the decision that there should be a regional ministry on digital policies to address these challenges. The government plan revolved around 5 main pillars. One, which was capacitated and protected digital citizenship. So it's about fostering capacities and capabilities, ensuring that we are qualifying digital professionals in the digital economy. That would be the first pillar. And a lot of this has already been touched on before. It's about forming a cohesive territory made up of smart cities and digital infrastructures. It's having a 21st century government and administration that is open, digital, and efficient. Cybersecurity, as the fourth point, is another of the aspects that we need to be working on, protecting citizens, companies, and institutions. And finally, the fifth pillar in our government plan is innovation, digital innovation as a driver of the new economy. It's about how we leverage this innovation. So now I'm just going to highlight a few figures in Catalonia. I won't go into too great a depth, but there are 16,339 companies in the ICT department and 128,000 employees in this sector. This past 2020, what we have seen is that growth in the technology sector, according to a recent survey, in 2020 was more than 15,000 jobs in this sector in Catalonia, which means a 30% growth annually. And over the past 5 years, Catalonia has been dealing with growth figures of around 10% per year in the technology sector. So what policies are we embracing to promote digital talent? Here I'd like to underline the fact that we know it has to be a holistic policy. We can't just have digital training, digital qualification policies. We need a whole ecosystem surrounding that to foster this talent. And in this regard, it's important to have international benchmark universities who have good syllabuses. Earlier, we were talking about the University of Barcelona having a degree of artificial intelligence, a degree in artificial intelligence. There's others in Catalonia as well, and they're so important because we need this talent. And talent won't only come from government policies. It will also come from this digital approach. So as a summary, these are just some of the main qualification programs that we have been fostering from the government. We want to train and qualify people. We want to upscale. We want to make sure that people have the skills they need. So there is the STEAM program on the one hand, which intends to encourage people to embark in, let's say, scientific technical qualifications. We need to try and encourage people to want to join this kind of academic field at a very young age. We've seen from our studies that only a small percentage of young people want to do this from a very early age, and then they struggle to change. So it's important to make sure that they want to be in science and technology as soon as possible in their lives, and to make sure we have enough talent. There are also policies linked to digital talent. These are specific programs to generate and attract digital talent in Catalonia in this sector, which will guarantee the competitiveness of our digital fabric. So as I was saying, it's about building a whole ecosystem to create employment and foster the growth of startups as well, to make sure that this ecosystem is sturdy and can provide these professionals with a place where they can work here in Spain, here in Catalonia, without having to leave and find jobs in other countries. We also have a few initiatives such as the TIC Points, which is a network of over 550 centers across Catalonia, providing digital training and qualifications. We also have a program called ACTIC for digital qualification at 3 different levels, one of which is very advanced. It helps citizens to develop certified qualifications and to prove their digital abilities. In 2020, over 90,000 people applied to this program, 60,000 of which were able to become certified. We also have specific policies on gender. We have Donatic, which intends to encourage women to pursue a degree or a career in these fields. And there's another program that we have linked to FAT Labs and digital citizenship, where we try to foster collaboration among citizens in this kind of spaces. So what I wanted to do with all this is just to give you an idea, a bit of an overview about what we do. I want to insist on the fact that it has to be a holistic approach, that collaboration is crucial between the public and private sector. This is not an initiative that can be addressed from a solely public or private point of view. We need companies to be on board and engaged in all of these programs. For example, the Barcelona Digital Talent Program I was mentioning involves working with companies, real businesses, that help us to reskill certain professionals. So it's about professionals who cannot find a job in the sector that they were qualified for and requalifying them, reskilling them. There's a special program to do that. We work with companies to help us along the way, to help them direct the talent in the right direction. Public-private collaboration is important, but so is public-public collaboration. We have to try and encourage universities to steer some of their degrees, some of their qualifications to wherever the sector is asking us to go. As I was mentioning earlier, artificial intelligence is a big niche in any of its disciplines. So be it robotics, deep learning, machine learning, we need professionals who are qualified in that sector because the sector is demanding those professionals. So as a conclusion, I'd like to highlight the fact that we need to boost digital talent. We cannot be a competitive economy if we don't believe in the digital talent and support it. And talent is the most important asset in this field. Catalonia, Barcelona has the ability to attract talent, but we need to also retain and create further talent. I was also saying public-private collaboration is very important. We need active policies in all qualification fields to achieve this holistic vision, which is what governments need. It's what public governors need if we are to suitably face the challenge ahead of us, especially in a situation like this where we need an economic change. We need the economy to be based on digital capabilities. Thank you very much to the Secretary General. Moving on to the next stage, to the next speaker, we're going to hear from another speaker about a best practice example. I also need to ask all of the speakers to keep an eye on the chat box because people are putting forward questions. Some of these questions will be read out later during the Q&A session if we have time, as long as people stick to their allocated times. But because I'm not sure we will have very long to debate, I'd like to encourage you to answer the questions as we go along and by reading the chat box. In the meantime, I'm going to give the floor to Anna, who is in charge of digital transformation from the Business and Training Division of the Basque Country, which is another region in Spain that is very strongly wagering on digitalization by fostering programs that they had already for a few years, but they're now redefining them. So the floor is yours. Ana Victoria. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to say a few words in Basque because we like to do that.
Saludar a las en este momento 191
So I'd like to say hello to 191 people who are currently listening to us and showing interest in the projects that we're talking to you about. I am a very proud director of a project, so I'm going to share with you a case of best practice, which it revolved around a dilemma that we solved with an umbrella initiative. And quite frankly, it's a very open project. We work in collaboration with a lot of other players, and I hope that sharing this idea will be useful to others in addressing local difficulties. I'm going to share a small presentation with you because I think it will provide a good visual aid. Let me share this with you.
¿Se ve en estos momentos?
Can you see my presentation? Yes, no problem. Excellent. The project that I'm going to talk to you about is Icanos. I think you'll be able to remember this name. It's quite memorable. There is a website there that you can see in the top right-hand corner, icanos.eus. It's openly accessible. And this initiative was launched in 2012 with the aim of cultivating digital competencies. As a general thought, I'd like to share with you the idea that in Europe and in our project, we're no longer talking about the digital divide. We're not talking about divides anymore, but rather about digital competencies that differ from the competencies that people really need. So I'd like to talk less about divides and more about digital equality and equal opportunities. We were talking earlier about the importance of being connected at a time of a pandemic, of having devices that they need, computers and so on, and also equal access to knowledge. The European Commission, in some of its key documents on social rights, highlights the importance of this. We need to provide knowledge in an understandable language, and member states also need to be able to ensure that the entire population has access to basic digital knowledge. That knowledge is going to allow people to access all of the possibilities of the digital society as consumers and as workers. It's going to help us to engage in this new society and equal opportunities, equal access to knowledge, as I was just saying. So the project I'm going to talk to you about does not intend to foster employment as such, but rather to maintain it. It wants to make people as employable as they were and give them new opportunities in the digital context, helping them to adapt to market needs according to their own capabilities. This project, excuse me, just a moment. I'm struggling with my slides. Here we go, some of the technological difficulties. So it's an umbrella initiative, as I was saying, that intends to share digital competencies, make sure that these digital competencies are taken into account. This pandemic has been tragic, but it also is an opportunity to prove that this is not only important, but also urgent. This digital transformation is critical right now. This project facilitates progress. It guides people through and it helps them to join the work market. We offer a model with a customized roadmap that goes step by step, where we work with different organizations and we ask them to establish a series of objectives, realistic objectives, because it's easy to say things in theory, but we need to define really practical profiles. according to real demand. When we're defining, let's say, healthcare professional profiles, what we do is we reach out to the local health service, our regional health service, and our local teachers, and we define the profiles that are in demand. By doing this, we've developed over 14 tools, all of which are online. Our website is available in Spanish, in Basque, and in English. So it's readily available to you all. We use the DIGCOMP conceptual framework through the European Commission, which defines what digital competencies are in 5 different areas: information management, generation of content, safety, problem solving, and one more, which are then divided into 21 others. I'm not going to go into detail about them, but it's an ideological framework. We also work with the World Bank, which has shown a lot of interest in this. So this is a meeting point. It's a bottom-up approach, which doesn't usually work in administration because they're very difficult to bring forward. But what we've done is take a very simple approach, a very realistic approach, which has turned us into an example, a very unique example within Europe and even on an international level. So together with the European Commission and its research delegations, we have developed the DIGCOMP tool to help people in the world of employment. So in this slide and in the next one, I'm going to really highlight the importance of raising awareness, because public administrations need to make sure that people are aware not only of what's available on the market, but of what will become available. I think raising awareness is not given the importance it deserves. We need to make sure that the whole society, every individual, is ready to embrace the new technology. It's also an initiative to guide people. We guide them all the way through, and we create services and ecosystems. We try to innovate as well. So when someone demands a service from us, we create a collaborative ecosystem and an experience lab that different people can share. Right now, we have the ability to apply all of this to both the public and private sector. And we also need to innovate. We need to do a lot of research, which we do. We're in touch with other European players, the European Digital Education Action Plan, for example. So our value proposal is essentially just to take steps, to undertake actions, and to provide tools that are adapted to each person, to each professional, to each company. So I want to encourage everyone to go to our website and take the self-assessment test so that they can understand what digital skills they have. They will obtain a PDF on whether they have basic skills or intermediate or advanced skills. And what we do with this self-assessment test is we gather all of the information in a database so that we can define a business plan, a business transformation plan. So we usually try to encourage that transformation plan to be connected to a specific project. So there was an example of a company that makes aeronautic components, and we tried to want to make them go paperless. This required a project because it meant going to look for new digital resources and setting people to work on them. We also try to foster a collaboration between different companies to put people in touch and help them reach out to one another. Events like this that we're holding today is an opportunity for that, and it helps us to be aware of new tools. The network, the international network, is crucial, and there are people out there doing doctoral theses, PhDs on this topic that can be so useful to us. And we are that drop, let's say, that drop of water that reaches everyone in the Basque Country and pushes them to improve their digital skills. We help to discover, audit, analyze, guide, learn, and prove. That's all of the tools that we drive. So there's the self-assessment test, as I was saying earlier. It's very quick. You can do it on your mobile phone, and it's just multiple choice. We've had thousands of people taking part. Then there's also the importance of defining your profile based on the European conceptual framework. We can define digital profiles. There are profiles for doctors, but also for workers in specialized fields, one of which is very important here in the Basque Country. We've also created a system to generate reports for businesses, and we offer guidance days to support people in employment services here in the Basque Country. Another of the tools we foster, which is fundamental right now, to help people to learn about themselves, because self-learning is so important. At the moment, when knowledge is developing so quickly and there's so much specialization, not even universities can keep up with the speed. So it's important for people to drive self-learning, which means knowing how to access new sources, new tools, new knowledge. And then it's also about proving these skills, for which we've developed digital competence databases. We now have 500,000 exams that have been taken in a population of 2 million people. And that's going to be crucial in making sure that people who join the civil service are well qualified. This is extremely important, so much so that in the European Digitalization Education Plan, this project has served as an example. And that's really all I wanted to share with you, and wanted to say thank you to the interpreters as well, because I usually do speak very, very quickly. But if anyone has any questions, please write them in the chat box and I will be happy to answer when I can. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Vitorica. We're going to now move on to the next presentation of best practice. And I just want to take the opportunity to say hello to everyone who's joined us more recently, whether on Zoom or on YouTube or wherever. I'm going to now give the floor to Tim Luan, the director of InnoWay, which is the innovation agency in the city of Beijing, China. So,
hello,
Mr.
everyone.
Tim Luan.
Yeah, so glad to having all of you here. I thought probably I'm the only person so far from Asia Pacific, and then so really glad to join this conference. And the following up couple of minutes, I would like to share what we've been doing, for instance, from China side to creating the job opportunities, especially in the field of digital solutions. And I would like to probably sharing a figure. Anna, you probably haven't stopped your sharing desk, but anyway, from my side, I don't have actually points there. Anyway, so I'm not sure how much, for instance, like a unicorn numbers, 2020, Chinese unicorn number so far is quite equal as United States. So that means cover 80%, roughly 80% of global unicorn numbers. And Chinese and the US unicorn number, pretty even. But back to, for instance, 2011 or 2012, Chinese unicorn number is only counting as, probably numbers, roughly 20-ish. So you can see, through those years, the Chinese unicorn numbers has been actually really rising up so much. That means, you can see also how much, the digital, job opportunities, provided, especially in this field. And probably, of course, we cannot really ignore about, the pandemic, what we are facing so far, especially 2020. But if you remember, back to the history, 2003, and China has been actually facing a SARS, pandemic, back to roughly 18 years ago. 18 years ago. So that was actually mostly only China and then some of the related country, for instance, a couple of cities in Canada and etc. But not really, in fact, the global, global point. Why I mentioned this one is that probably for instance, Alibaba. You might know JD.com. JD.com is second largest e-commerce company in China. Alibaba is first, the largest one. Both of them, establish and also create, their job opportunities and also their platform through after 2003, which is, right during the period of SARS, pandemic, happens in China. So that means, people cannot really go to actually, buying the groceries and then city to city shutdowns. And so that was actually only, choice, people starting to place order purchase from online. And then of course that, that time the only PC versions and etc. But just would like to share you what actually we've been facing and also the opportunities, what we've been actually challenged. And now it's actually since 2019, 2020, and now we are facing the new challenge. And at least from China, we see so much, again, the new job being created, especially in the field of digital, market. For instance, I would like to share you one of the story, which is, could be called, live streaming e-commerce. That means, many of the KOL and many of the big shops, they starting to selling the products, promoting the products from like live streaming, and which is a super popular nowadays in China. And then one, I can, for instance, give you example. One of the KOL, he can sell 9 billion RMB. That means 9 billion. That means probably a little bit more than 1 billion US dollars in one day. In one day, that's the revenue of 1 day sales of one KOL. And that means how much opportunities that could be created. And that you can imagine the logistics and then manufacturers working day and nights and trying to providing the suitable products and through this digital platform. And of course online educations and then webinars and etc is actually also creating. My wife is working in one of the webinar company. So the company has been actually increasing the number of employee roughly 3 times more compared with 2 years ago. So that's actually the figures what we are facing. And then from government side, you will see the government is trying to building up. No, it's not trying, but we are doing, which is called the new infrastructure. You probably know the infrastructure. That means highway, railway stations, high-speed trains, etc. But that was actually back to roughly 10 years ago. But now we are building the new infrastructure. That means the 5G stations, and plus the data centers, because we are making this ready, preparing for the revolution of VRs, the virtual realities, and then even ARs, even MR, mixed realities, etc. So probably in future on, and also I see the applications popping up already. Future on, we don't need necessary to have this conference as only the 2 dimension, but we can play something in the 3 dimension. That means we can see your face even more clear than we are in the physical room. And of course that's really rely on like a 5G stations and etc. So we are building those to making the scenario and also the foundations ready. And that's actually meanwhile we're creating so much jobs opportunities for whoever the people doing 5G station building up, and plus the data center construction and etc. So that's actually what we see so far happening in China. I wish that I do believe probably next year the local economic development forum could be actually hosted by like a VR scenario, environmentals. And love to see and the super exciting about like what we are facing. And of course, on the other hand, we are facing we actually everybody, especially from our our country, that we many of those people still losing jobs, and from the traditional business, and the companies shutting down, and then the physical commercial buildings getting actually so much empty rooms. And then we are facing so much reform, and also transforming from the traditional business again to the digital world. And of course pandemic, which is pushing us forward and even more faster. And that could be also challenge and also the opportunities what we can see from 2021. I think probably that's the most figures I would like to share today. And I love to give the floor back to the host and Caroline. And thank you so much. And looking forward to see you maybe once again in China. And then thank you so much.
Muchas gracias por su intervención. ¿Tendrá
Thank
usted...
you so much for your words. There will be a second round later on where we can hear from all of our speakers about how to narrow the digital divide, for example, in China, in Beijing. So thank you for sharing that with us. We're now going to move on to hear from another person from Argentina, from Cordoba. This time it will be Laura Jure, the Minister for the Promotion of Employment and Family Economy of the Provincial Government of Cordoba in Argentina. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, Carles, and congratulations on this preparatory session. I'd like to say thank you to the Vice Governor because we feel at home. I'd also like to thank ORU Fogard and all of the members of the International Committee of this forum. It's a matter of great pride for me to be able to take part in this preparatory session where we will be the hosts of the forum. We know that the pandemic has quickened the pace of technology in every form, and this brings problems but also opportunities in embracing this technology and applying it not only in companies but at individual worker levels. So today in this presentation, we're going to focus very much on the short term to talk about how we think policies should be developed in Cordoba. There are a lot of questions that come up as we think about this, how to approach it. Uncertainty is global, but there are some certainties that are going to help us to make decisions in the short term. Technology is very quickly changing production methods. We have artificial intelligence, robotics, that is changing routine tasks and adapting the way people really live. It's creating opportunities for employment, but also threats. And the market is struggling to adapt to the demands of an increasingly complex world. So with this context in mind, in order to overcome the threats and really embrace the opportunities, we truly believe that there has to be a focus on the present. The state has to focus on guiding companies and individuals in ensuring that they have the tools they need to adapt professionally to this digital revolution and to narrow the digital divide. In this respect, Cordoba is tackling a whole series of initiatives. The province has a series of lines of action, but I'm going to focus on 3 of them. First of all, promotion of employment, then professional training and qualification, and then entrepreneurship. These 3 are very much linked to technology, and we may separate one from the other, but ultimately they can't be conceived individually. In order for an employment policy to be successful, we absolutely need it to be designed together with the private sector, through chambers, through associations, because they're the ones who really understand the difficulties and the potential and the needs of each sector. With all of these ideas in mind, what I want to share from here, from Cordoba, is the qualification and training program that we have ventured into in new technologies. This program was adapted to actual needs in the industry of software. It was the first that we launched out of a series of different programs. This program for training and qualification in new technologies has been designed to provide the software industry with qualified professional profiles, software developers, and other profiles that companies have told us that they need. And based on the information, we defined these profiles. Now, the way we did this was with a holistic approach. We created an executive committee with different areas of government, such as employment, technology, industry, education, as well as universities. We also worked closely with universities on this steering committee, on this organizational committee, because we had local governors, we had universities, the private sector, and with all of them working together, we were able to bring this program forward. This program combines, on the one hand, very powerful training and qualification, the content of which was based on real demand in the private sector, and actual work experience, which means that the young people who take them have a 12-month period in which they are receiving training at the same time as they are undertaking work experience. So it's not just theoretical, they also have this practical approach to it, and they have a series of hours that they have to be working. It's 300 hours, and that's one of the program's goals. So it's about introducing new people to the software industry. And we also want to boost abilities and competencies of workers who are already working in software companies, because they also need to keep training constantly to raise their ability, to raise their standards, skills. And ultimately, it's about generating a human capital that is constantly up to date and growing. The beneficiaries of our program have been hundreds already. A lot of them will end up working in these private companies once they've finished their work experience. Others will go to different companies because once they've got this training, they will be valuable assets to other companies. And no doubt some of them will be entrepreneurs in new software companies. We will guide them in that entrepreneurial process. So it's not just about training and qualification. It's also about providing credit lines, business opportunities, and ensuring that entrepreneurship really works. I don't want to go on for too long because I know that time is short, but this is a program that I wanted to mention as an example of the way we conceive and execute our projects in the city of Cordoba, really leveraging the opportunities that the digital revolution brings. We have a series of programs that go along these same lines, combining actual work experience with professional qualifications and theory, and it's all very closely done with universities, the private sector and local governments. What I want to say is that all these young people over 12 months are given this stimulus because it's free for them. It's co-funded by the private sector and partly by the government. Because we believe that education, training, and employment are crucial to drive sustainable development and inclusive development. We need to really fight to make sure that we're not just users of technologies, but that we're actually developers, creators of technology, because we all have the capability to do so. And the state, the government needs to ensure that the conditions are there so that people can, everyone should be able to access these programs and enjoy the access to these new jobs, which are not only the present, they're also the future. I'm going to just be very quickly because we're running behind. So that's all from me. And I hope that this example is useful for you for new experiences. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. During this first session, we have one last speaker. I'd like to now give the opportunity to share another best practice on digital employment. We have Mohamed Sadiki, who is the mayor of Rabat in Morocco, and he is also a member of the council of the Rabat Saleh Kenitra region. Mr. Mohamed Sadiki, the floor is yours.
Merci à tout le monde.
Thank you, everyone.
Donc, je dis bonjour à tout le monde. Ravi d'être parmi vous.
Everyone, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Bien sûr, mais conseiller à la région de Rabat, Saleh, Kenitra.
But also as a member of the council of the region.
Monsieur Absamad Sekel, qui m'a délégué.
Monsieur Sekel et ma déléguée ont participé avec moi pour faire cette présentation.
Mais bien avant, mais avec le confinement imposé par le Covid-19.
With the quarantine imposed in 2019 and 2020, the digital age brought some solutions to a few of the problems we had. What was done in our territories and how we used digital technology to find solutions. We all discovered how we could work from home or at a distance. And also got rid of many jobs. This is wrong because digital technology should actually promote the creation of more jobs.
Numérique dans sa région ou dans sa municipalité. À notre niveau,
at our level,
le numérique il a pris une
true that
pour dire normal le parcours, mais avec le Covid-19,
normal, but
un peu la vitesse.
But with
le numérique est devenu une des solutions
through this pandemic. Solutions, firstly, during the confinement, we started up again.
Je peux dire que chez nous, on n'est pas suffisamment, c'est-à-dire en avance par rapport aux pays européens, mais quand même, avec l'aide de notre agence de
compared to European countries, but we have also been able to work during confinement. We have created e-desks. We managed administrative procedures could be done electronically or digitally. We also developed all the authorizations necessary that the municipality gives, financial, urban constructions, and all kinds of authorizations. All of this digitally throughout confinement. We also discovered that we could meet just like we are doing now. We can speak, we can exchange ideas, we can even develop ideas. And young people discovered that they can create new platforms to deliver goods such as food. Without getting in the way of the confinement. In our region, we have held about hundreds of webinars. We have spoken to different regions and to our partners. Even culture wasn't forgotten. To carry out festivals and continue other cultural activities. Life. Digitally, we also implemented digital museums, virtual museums, all done thanks to startups and companies that were created during the pandemic. Legal system or system can even support a new company in only 2 hours, maximum 24 hours, but all these platforms contribute enormously to our financial project, putting some statistics in place to see exactly how many startups were created. We will have these numbers very soon. I will stop here to hand over to my colleagues. Thank you very much for listening.
Muchas gracias, señora.
Thank you very much. This brings the first round to an end, and we will now move on to the second topic we had established, where the question was how to combat the social and territorial divide. We now will have a presentation by Elba Fuster Figuerola. I'm sorry. Well, it's time to move on to the next stage. As I was saying, Elba Fuster Figuerola will be giving us a presentation, but someone is telling me that Laura Jure, the Minister for Promotion of Employment and Family Economy of the Provincial Government of Córdoba, has to leave now. So ideally, we would give her 2 minutes to, just before she goes, explain to us how they will narrow this digital divide in the province of Córdoba. I have to say that the digital world brings with it new habits. And as I was saying earlier, people can get up and leave from a webinar. And right now, we don't have the same amount of people connected as we did at the beginning of our session. So let's try and be very brief. Let's be very concise. And I want to give Laura Jure just 2 minutes before she goes. Great. Thank you, Carles. Thank you very much. We know that in order to narrow this digital divide, we need the state to be on board. We need it to be on board at every single level. It needs to play an active role to ensure everyone has equal access to the same things. We need to also try and break down stereotypes that there still are in gender. We know that there are several divides. There is access to digital means, where the state needs to step in, as our Vice Governor was saying at the beginning. We have a program where the state is setting up fiber optics networks to make sure that the internet reaches everywhere. We don't want to leave anyone out of that network. But there are also very large gender divides. And we need to work on that because it's a cultural concept. We need to tackle it from a very early age. We need to start at schools and follow it through at every different age. That's what we're doing in Córdoba. We have a series of initiatives to foster inclusion of young women aged 13 to 18 so that they can decide where they want to steer their careers. No one's going to choose a career that they've never heard of. So we want to make sure that they know about them. We want to start doing this at schools. And we as the government are trying to guide women in this development process. So all in all, we need to narrow divides at different levels, and the state presence in that role is very important. That's the challenge we face now. It's our responsibility and it's our commitment, not just in the province of Cordoba, but working internationally, as we were saying. There are 427 municipalities here in Cordoba. So that means 427 different decision makers that we need to have on board and that we need to agree with. I want to say thank you to everyone, and once again, congratulations. I will be with you for just a little while longer. Thank you very much. As I was saying, it is now Elba Fuster Figueroa's turn to speak. She is the Smart City Technical Expert of Singapore Global Center. This forum is now coming up for its 5th edition. It's organized by the UCLG, by Orufogar, and also by UNDP. United Nations Development Programme is an important, very important player in the United Nations organization, and they have played a crucial role in putting us in contact with these local and regional territories. So we are delighted to have Elba Fuster with us. She's usually in Singapore, but at the moment she's in Catalonia, and she's going to talk to us about how we should be addressing the digital divide. Thank you very much, Carlos. I'm going to share a presentation with you. Thank you, firstly, for inviting me to share my ideas and to share the room with such interesting people. I think all of the examples people have been talking about are going to be very useful. A lot of people have mentioned in their papers how important it is to combat this divide. And we at the UNDP are based in Singapore. What we do is we use our different offices, different networks. We have Asia, Latin America. We help to implement digitalization processes, smart cities, and also innovation and technology adapted to policies. I'm here to share with you just a general idea of some of the elements we keep very much in mind when we are guiding authorities into embracing these policies. These are some of the ideas that really help them to define better policies or to anticipate some of the difficulties, because ultimately the objective is for digital transformation to not worsen the divide that there already is in the digital sphere. It's one of the issues that we're dealing with here today. Some of these elements are the idea that digital is not everything, okay? Digital tools are just that, they're tools. We can encourage this digital transformation, but we need to really understand that they are part of a greater policy, and that without a good holistic design, these tools wouldn't work. As an example, I'm going to give you an example of the United States, but it could apply to any other country. It's about students who have access to computers, internet, platforms, and some who haven't during university studies. And the quality in education has dropped, even though they had access to these tools. And in some cases, that has worsened some of the differences, social difference, which reminds us that this digital transformation and the opportunities it brings have to be put into perspective. There are other factors. For example, having a controlled, supervised space, having an adequate room in which to study. There's so many factors that are important, not just the digital side. It has to be set in a bigger framework. It's just a tool for a much broader concept. And I want to also apply this to the different levels of education. A lot of other speakers have mentioned this because I think we all share a lot of ideas. It's really important for new generations to gain the skills they need to keep up with this digitalized world and be able to develop the digital economy that we keep talking about. Because that is the future, no doubt. It's going to be very important in a lot of economies in different countries. When we think about the educational system, we need to be thinking about these specialized initiatives to help users who are currently not really part of the tradition of the system to become part of it. We mustn't lose sight of our existing educational structure, though. We may have shortcomings in reading or mathematics, and that will, of course, affect the ability of the generations to adapt to the digital economy. So let's not forget the basics of education. Having these digital skills from a very early age is important, along with other skills. Another of the elements that must be borne in mind when defining these policies and is very much aligned with topics that people have been mentioning is access and design. Because when we engage in digital transformation, especially public services, where our services have to reach all of the citizens, it's important to understand who your audience is, who our users going to be. We need to make sure that they have access to it. We need to make sure that the technology is affordable and that the devices that they have are suitable for it. So these are just some examples of data in Latin America, access to internet and to computers, and also habits of use of computers in certain countries. That's what is shown here. And we find that a lot of people don't have access to a computer, and those who do don't necessarily always use it on a regular basis. It's important to know also what devices people are using to connect. Do they have to pay for their own internet connection? And so this is all very important in defining our policies and in understanding how we're going to reach citizens. Also, gender is a relevant topic because internet access among women is much lower often in a lot of regions. A lot of women either don't have access, the same access as men, or they don't own the devices, or they haven't been trained, they haven't got enough knowledge to be able to use them properly. So it's about knowing who our users are when we are defining the future of the policies. We must bear in mind that some users won't be able to use online means and that we need to make sure that they can, that they have access to them. So service improvements have to keep this in mind. Some things could be solved with specific training, for instance, but for others, maybe they have different needs. Perhaps the service needs to be adapted. It's about not leaving anyone behind, ultimately. It's about designing everything we do, bearing in mind who the user is going to be. And just to sum up very quickly, because this is important, when we are defining the digital transformation, it's keeping regulatory frameworks up to date. That is extremely relevant when we are deploying our infrastructures, establishing incentives and ways of cooperation. But it's also important in generating demand, giving users confidence. And in confidence, I mean data privacy, security, safe transactions in e-commerce. So that regulatory framework is crucial to make sure all of this is going along the right lines. Internal change is important too. Administrations, public administrations need to understand that the digital transformation is a long-term process. It's not just a one-off event. So having qualified professionals already working there and drawing in new qualified talent is crucial if we are going to provide properly designed systems. And last but not least, multi-level governance is important. We need to create mechanisms for collaboration and information with institutions at different levels, local, regional, national, to make sure that we're not duplicating our efforts, that no one's overlapping, and that each level reaches different users. It's ultimately, this point is about fostering an exchange of knowledge. And that's all from me, from my presentation. If anyone would like me to make any more comments, I would be happy to do so. Thank you, Ms. Fuster, for this introduction. We're now going to go straight in to this session, which is going to have to be much shorter. Here, what we ask our speakers is how to combat the digital divide. We're going to start once again with Monsieur Dobry, giving him 2 minutes to talk about how they are combating the digital divide from the digital cluster in the region of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes in France.
Espero que esté ahí el señor Daniel Baudrier.
I hope Daniel Dobry is there. Otherwise, we'll be moving straight on to Alejandra Torres. How is the digital divide being combated in the municipality of Córdoba, Argentina? I'm not sure you can hear me. Yes. Great. I think everything we've mentioned is really important. Connectivity is crucial, and so is education. It's essential for a legal system or a jurisdiction to have the digital world accessible to everyone, because vulnerable populations are, of course, more limited. Even if there is connectivity, they won't necessarily have access to it. And secondly, we think that another crucial way of reducing the divide is working together, of defining educational programs that are better prepared. It's about ongoing learning, critical thinking, and abilities that, well, some people say there's 10 of these skills, others say there's 12 of these skills. However many there are, it's about preparing an individual regardless of their gender or social class and giving them the ability to learn, to be up to date with the modern world. Today, the issue may be the pandemic. Tomorrow, it might be an earthquake. Whatever the reality we're in, if we fail to prepare our youngsters and give them this opportunity to be permanently looking for new ways of doing things, to be disruptive and working as a team, otherwise we will struggle very much to narrow the digital divide. Thank you. Well, yes, now we could ask, the digital divide can be social and territorial. So let's ask David Ferrer how they're dealing with this in Catalonia.
Bueno, pues no sé si ya pasamos la pregunta a la
Maybe
señora.
we could move this question on to Ana Vitorica from the Basque Country. What are you doing there to combat the digital divide in the Basque Country? Hello, you can hear me, right? Once again, I'm going to share a little presentation. 2 minutes. It's just one slide, an inspiring slide, just to give you an idea of how we approach this issue.
¿Sí? ¿Se ve?
You see it?
Sí.
Yes.
Bien, la idea sería, les pongo esa
The
foto.
idea is quite clear in this picture of this robot. We spoke early about big spaces, and sometimes when we're focusing on the smaller level, on small areas like the Basque Country, which is very small, it's very industrialized, it's an industry of makers, very much connected to the automobile industry, and ultimately industries that provide services and products and that are strongly digitalized, and they're very demanding. We have a lot of automation here in the Basque Country. And our economy is made up of a lot of small businesses. That's what our business fabric looks like. So this divide is really a divide between people. And another idea is the 4.0 divide or gap. We can always improve, we can always contribute more. So our holistic vision that I was talking to you about earlier includes all of these initiatives, which especially support SMEs to help them make huge leaps in their processes, because the 4.0 industry is the ultimate goal. Here you can see the names of all of the programs we've been working on, but I want to just really highlight the importance of that holistic vision. It's about improving acceleration, providing financing to make these processes much quicker. We have huge technology centers for research, but we need companies to use them. And we provide use cases and experimentation cases to ensure that they do that. It's about bringing R&D closer to the companies so that they become experimentation labs in themselves, and so that our research centers can really investigate what companies need. That, for us, is very important. And use cases are very important, for instance, in developing 5G, not just the infrastructure, but the idea of the companies adapting to it. This year, we're going to launch a 5G use funding project, so not just the infrastructure. And we also really want, our ambition is to reach every company. We cannot conceive a company developing in the digital sphere if it doesn't have sufficient broadband, sufficient fiber optics. So it's important for us to reach every company. We get very, very small companies knocking on our doors who want to make huge digital leaps, but they don't have sufficient fiber optics. So we need the whole territory to be equally developed. And entrepreneurship has to include small companies and large companies. And we want them to collaborate because entrepreneurs need a market, but big companies also need entrepreneurs. It's a symbiosis. They can provide small but very valuable solutions to large companies. To achieve that, we have created an initiative called BI 4.0. And it's all about keeping everyone on board. Let's not leave anyone behind. There are different projects. One of them is a friend. Let's say Implantalaria would be the friend that you call when you need a problem. That's a service that can help companies to reach professionals that they need. Then there is a company that develops events. The idea is for the Basque company to be like a lighthouse for companies, to guide them along the way. and give them technology and know-how. We have another service which is called Barnetegi, where companies in the Basque Country are located in a rural area. They are taken away from their day-to-day work, and then, surprise, surprise, we face them with these 4.0 technologies, and they realize that something that scared them is something they can actually do. And then we also aim to create an ecosystem where all of the social fabric, all of the economic fabric gets together. It's a very important annual event called Basque Industry 4.0, where we want everyone to get together. It's a mass event where anyone who wants to learn how to collaborate can do so. It's about them getting together in person. And that's all I wanted to say. I'm sorry if I went on for too long. Now we would give the floor to Tim Luan from Beijing to tell us about how they are dealing with the digital divide in Beijing.
All right, thank you again. So basically, no matter Beijing or China, that's as you know, we are pretty central controlled country. But on the other hand, you will see so much free hand to the users and whoever willing to using all the digital apps, etc. So, and also we give the space for the new technologies and new digital forms that they could try. Whatever the new business models, etc. That means we are not really, and plus, the citizens is not really actually, care about especially in the beginning, that's privacies, etc. So people, when we are creating the digitalization, the scenario, etc. The priority and also the voices from traditional world, which is always privacies and then also breaking the regulations, etc. But from what I see, our actually territory, which is bring and then so much the free space for the for the young generations, and plus all the new applications. So first thing first, give the trial to the to the new stuff. Even so, the law and the regulation, which is not really popping up yet, but still we give the sort of space. So I was actually remember last year we joined the, probably wouldn't mention the country name, but that's actually bring huge the differences in between China and also our even so some neighbor countries. And then China is now really good at the really core technologies, but actually especially in the field of mobile internet, etc., and the database, we actually really catching up. And then now based on the the data, we actually transforming ourselves to be artificial intelligence, and even so including blockchain. So all those the new technologies and the revolution, which is actually redefine of the territory. Previously, we have the territory based on the really geographic territory, province to province, city to cities. But now based on the the user habit, and then we actually to give the category of the citizen or users to be actually calibrated by a new figures, which is not based on the physical territory. So that's actually the challenge. Of course, we are facing a new problem every single day, and our job is actually to find the solutions, making the society and better. So that's actually what what we see from the space, from the place where we live. And yeah, so that's it. Thank you so much, and then love to give the floor back to to the host. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Muy ilustrativo saber cómo
Thank
se
you
ve.
very much. It's very interesting to hear about how things work in Beijing. And just to round things up, we have one last person to hear from. We have a mayor who is also a member of a regional council. So it's the mayor of Rabat once again, who now has the floor, Mr. Mohamed Sadiki. Please go ahead and explain how you tackle the digital divide in the capital of Morocco, in the city of Rabat, and in the entire region of Rabat.
Merci à tout le monde.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Avec le COVID-19 que nous avons.
It's not with COVID-19 that we acted to minimize or to eliminate this digital gap. We acted on our regions and on our fields. The whole capital very well connected in terms of networks that everyone has access to it in an equal way. From the point of view of the region, it's very big, and we have collaborated with different operators from telephone companies and network companies that we had worked with before. We found no problems. The coverage was very well done throughout the territory.
Comment nous, on a pu savoir comme quoi c'est bien fait, c'est lors du confinement, c'est lors de
confinement, we realized how well the connection was because when children were not going to school anymore, we looked for witnesses to see if everyone could follow distance learning and follow their classes online. And can everyone order things online and do everything they need to do from their own home? Where we created a platform and even a social passport for the distribution of food for those who needed it.
Mais qu'on a repris lors du confinement dans c'est-à-dire des résidences qui répondent à tout. Nous avons fait un passeport.
Homes during confinement, we gave them a social passport to digitalize.
C'est-à-dire toute l'information, il suffit de passer même juste à côté. Et c'est un travail que nous avions fait, la mairie de Rabat.
This is a collaboration between and Europe through several embassies as well. So we were able to certain social actions thanks to this digital balance, and so that because everybody has access and all territories had access to an internet connection and digital technology.
On a minimisé la profondeur du fossé, on a essayé d'équilibrer, et quand même, pour nous, on est en train de dire Covid n'est pas seulement un problème, mais aussi il nous a poussé à accélérer des solutions pour avoir des territoires équilibrés, des territoires attractifs, des territoires qui peuvent...
Territories where everyone has access and where everyone can develop wealth and everyone is included. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This brings the second round of speeches to an end. And now, although we are 5 minutes in, 5 minutes past our ending time, we should have a bit of a debate and talk about some of the questions that have been coming up in the chat box, I would like to invite the speakers, or just a moment, because some of the questions in the chat box, there are, let's say, groups of questions. And there's a few topics that I'm going to just throw out there, and whoever wants to can reply. And we'll also see whether we can hear from David Ferrer and Mr. Dobry. But moving on to the questions in the chat box, one of the first questions was, are regional and local governments able to work in the digital sphere? Do they have the ability to foster employment in the digital area? That's the first question. And so one of the suggestions is, in order to avoid this digital divide, what we need to do is lower the price of computers and internet connections and so on. Is that feasible? Can that be done publicly? And the third question, which I think we should raise, I think it's a useful question, is, can there be North-South cooperation, South-South cooperation, or a South-South-North triangle? I wonder if any of the speakers dares to answer one or more of these questions. So I'm going to open the mic for perhaps the mayor of Rabat. What do you think? Could you answer any of these questions for us?
Sí. ¿Quién se atreve? ¿Quién?
Is anyone willing to answer this question, perhaps from China? Or perhaps the translation of the questions hasn't reached everyone?
Sorry, may I have the question again, if it's possible? So they didn't actually really catching up.
A ver, hay tres preguntas. La primera pregunta sería...
There are three questions. The first one would be, do you think local and regional governments are sufficiently able to step into the digital sphere and create employment? That's the first question. The second one is South-South cooperation possible?
Could we starting one-to-one? You know, I'm actually just, you know, I'm golden fish, right? Really got a short memory. So the first one is actually local government, how to getting role of the digitalization.
Sí, más bien si tiene capacidades.
Well, it's more about whether the government has the competencies and the resources to do this. Do local and regional governments have the ability? That was the question.
Okay, basically, you know, for my understanding, which is mostly no, because local governments actually got pretty actually limited all the, you know, first world resources, and also, you know, and second one is the authorization. So many of the, you know, digitalization, you know, transforming, which is actually from, you know, really, you know, up, you know, top level. So for instance, you know, how the, you know, regulation of blockchains and how the regulation of, sharing economics and the digital forms and including VRs and etc. So really actually based on the, you know, central government to setting up the structures. And that's not really rely on the local government. And what are we understanding, at least for me, only me, right? So the local government usually, no matter where, I see from almost like, you know, country to country, always say mostly, is the local government mostly, you know, taking care of the local tax, you know, incomes, local tax incomes. So whatever the income, you know, will be actually increasing, will be the really the KPI for the local governments, and plus they could get, you know, the even promoted, you know, from their, you know, career building up, you know, based on, you know, those, you know, year by year increasing of the local tax. So what, there's, same thing in China and also the country I visit, always, mostly, same. And also competing each other from, territory to the other territory, province to the other province. And of course, increasing the sales, increasing the, job opportunities, etc., is actually priority for the for the local governments as well. Of course, the digital world could be actually the key point. But sometimes to increasing the job opportunity, not only digital world industries, but it could be also from other industries, from really like low entrance level job opportunities, including even the restaurant, etc. So that's actually really the situation so far, and it is the reality. So how about the second one?
Señor Sadiki, señor alcalde, usted quería
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think you wanted to say something.
That I don't agree with what my Chinese colleague said. It's not on a central level, local level, that we solved these problems to do with balance and digital capacities. These are our plans at a town level. It's a regional plan. Made sure that our regions or our towns or our cities are well equipped.
C'est au niveau gouvernemental. Mais de point de vue équipement, c'est nous, les locaux, qui sont en charge, et nous sommes en contact avec les opérateurs.
Has access to internet. Tell them that these are the needs of our citizens in terms of connection and of equipment. Thank you.
Okay, another question is, do you think that cooperation between the North and the South, and the South and the South, and the triangular communication is possible?
Oui, effectivement, nous, c'est un outil par lequel nous avons travaillé, ici présent même, c'est-à-dire des régions avec qui nous sommes partenaires, la région Rhône-Alpes, et même avec...
For example, Rhône-Alpes, or Rabat and Lyon. Rabat is connected to other European cities as well. So we have worked in a triangular way and exchanged our experiences and chosen operators with which we can partner up and improve our way of acting digitally.
And the final question was, do you think it would be possible for public administrations to help lower the price of technology so that it becomes more affordable and helps to narrow the divide?
This
is not the local governments. This is, for example, in Morocco, we have an agency that regulates this. It's different from the telephone operators, and they observe and take note of the prices and leave some room for negotiation, and don't let operators impose prices for users, for citizens, but even for companies that operate in the region. It's a national agency, not a regional agency.
Pues muy bien, si no hay otras respuestas.
Very well. If no one else would like to share their answers to these questions, I think it would be time for Juan Carlos Diaz from the Andalusian Fund of Municipalities for International Solidarity to just sum all of this up. And I know that's a very difficult task, but I'd like to invite you to just summarize what we've said here very quickly because we're already running behind. But I think it really is important to draw some of the key takeaways as a conclusion. Yes, thank you very much, Carles. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone. I will be very brief because, yes, we are running behind time. I would sum it up in 3 different blocks. Firstly, the variables, the fundamental elements that characterize the technological revolution and the way it impacts employment. Then the possibilities and opportunities and challenges that we need to face. And thirdly, the players, the actors, governments, public, private sector, states, businesses, SMEs, citizens. I think those are the 3 key points. And within the first point, which is the key variables that characterize this technological revolution in this pandemic context, which we, of course, cannot forget, gives us staggering data. Around 500 million employments, according to the ILO, have been destroyed as a result of the pandemic. But as we have heard from a lot of people's speeches, this digital revolution, this technical revolution, can also help to boost the economy and employment. And what I've been able to pick up is 4 key elements, one of which is access to technology, ensuring that people have access as a fundamental right to the internet. Not just individual people, but small and large businesses, startups, educational centers, family units. It's about securing that right of access to technology. The second variable or dimension, which I think every speaker has mentioned, is education and learning. And here I'd like this to be taken in the broadest sense. Both employment, education for employment, so academia, dual trainings, dual qualifications that combine theory and practice and guidance, and also the actual learning process that companies have to undertake, as well as the need to reach agreements between know-how, between universities, companies, technology companies, and business fabric at large. Another element would be promoting entrepreneurs and SMEs, whether in the technology sphere or in the more technical areas. This is something that has been mentioned quite clearly. It's not just about promoting technological centers who, of course, need this support, but about helping old businesses to adapt to this new scenario and to reactivate their work. And the 4th element would be collaboration, cooperation, governance between public and private spheres, linked not only to an alliance between the public and private sector and academia and so on, but also with developing processes, systems, regulations, and infrastructure. Those, I think, would be the 4 key elements. People have mentioned some opportunities brought about by this technological revolution, such as remote access to the seminar that we're hosting right now, possibilities such as e-commerce, setting up networks of knowledge to share experiences, new business opportunities in the sector and employment opportunities. Also in traditional sectors such as service, tourism, culture. And all of these opportunities also come with a degree of risk. There is a divide in between not just citizens, but between businesses. So that's a challenge that some of our speakers have highlighted, the challenge of redistributing this revolution, making sure that it doesn't only reach certain technologies, certain industries, and certain sectors of the population, but ensuring that it reaches everyone. And within these challenges we need to understand who is taking part in it. Who are the players? Public administrations, who often have, let's say, obsolete procedures in place, and they can sometimes slow down process of reactivation of economic activity. But they also have a lot to contribute in implementing infrastructures, both technical infrastructures and service infrastructures, because there is a need to modernize the public sector, both the professional qualifications of the people who work in it and also the policies that they apply. And here you have really highlighted the importance of making these policies truly holistic, truly comprehensive. It's not just a digital policy that we need to define. It's a digital policy that takes everything into account, such as infrastructure, dissemination, training, and incentivation. Collaboration between public administrations and businesses is, all in all, very, very important. A lot of you have mentioned this. Businesses in the private industry are already starting to take steps towards this. They're beginning to take part in processes on digital campuses, ecosystems, where they can create alliances, not just to create new services, but also to innovate in their ability to produce and to learn from one another. And I think that's something that's important to mention, because companies are already doing this. It's not just the traditional companies, but also the new ones developing new products and services. This all in itself can contribute to narrow that digital divide, or to make that digital divide a little less severe. Education, connectivity, sharing of knowledge, R&D and I, shared workspaces, public-private alliances, developing new regulatory models, governance models, comprehensive policies. All of these points are key elements that some of you have highlighted, and that I just wanted to sum up right now as quickly as possible. I don't want to deprive you of any more of your time. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Juan Carlos. This final point now is the time for me to say thank you to everyone who's been listening. Huge thanks to all of the speakers, to all of our panelists who've shared their experience. It's been very interesting to listen to you all. Thank you to the 3 key teams who have been working to make all of this possible. The first one is ORU FOGAR, led by Ana Fernandez. Then also huge thanks to FAMSI, the Andalusian Fund, because they have been doing a whole lot of work, both Paula and Pablo. Thank you also to ADEC, who is represented by Marisa Ramos here, for all the work that they've done too. That's all from us. Today we have heard a lot about good and very varied practices on 4 different continents. We've had people from 4 continents around the world. In fairness, there were less representatives from Asia, but that is nonetheless 4 continents that have been here, and we have just awarded or organized a best practice award. And I think that everyone who's shared their projects here today could take part in that. We announce it every year with the UNDP. And a lot of the experiences that you've shared with us today would fit into that competition, that contest that we launch annually. We've only just launched this year's version, and that's all from me. We will continue to work here on the way to organizing the forum in the month of May. Today we've had our preparatory session on the digital sphere, but on the 3rd of February, this time another session will be organized by the UCLG and FAMSI, and we're going to have another preparatory webinar about fair trade. So I hope to see all of you on that day as well. And I hope that the stories that we hear will be as interesting as they were today. Thank you to everyone. I look forward to seeing you on the 3rd of February. Goodbye.